Okay. All right, welcome back. Week 18. What are you laughing at?
I'm laughing at the fact that like we just had a 30-minute conversation. I did not have any need to cough. And yet you're like, okay, are you ready? And I'm like coughing up a lung. It's just hilarious.
That's how it goes. A little bit of stage fright, perhaps. Yeah, lots going on. I mean, not a lot in terms of new content, of course. I think speculation more than anything. Fingers crossed for a Phish Christmas album.
What?
Could you imagine? Could you honestly imagine if all of a sudden Phish dropped a traditional Christmas album? What would the reaction?
They've teased Christmas songs before in their songs.
Sure, but could you imagine all of a sudden today you get an alert like a Phish Christmas and there's a full album with traditional Christmas songs by Phish? Could you imagine what the reaction would be?
That'd be awesome. Have you heard the Bare Naked Ladies Christmas album? It's like one of my favorite Christmas albums.
Really?
It's so good.
I'll have to check that out.
So good.
But knowing fans the way we know them, what do you think the honest reaction would be from the community?
Majority positive.
Okay.
You know, and then you know, whoever's having a bad day, have a bad day and hate just for them to hate, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Dude,
I just sort of brought
people. Listen, man, we're people before we're Phish fans, right? Like we think that we talked about this before. We think that we're different. We ain't different. We're just people. We're people who have a similarity around a band that we love and brings value to our life.
Right. Yeah, 100%. So yesterday I wanted that band to bring more value to my life. As you know, I tend to listen to Phish mostly in the car on the way home during the commute, other times too, but mostly. And I've got a terrible data plan, so I don't tend to stream Phish. I'll download it offline first, so it's saved on my phone, and then I'll play it in the car. Driving home yesterday, and I was just at the end of December 5th, 2009. Just about to head into the 4-night New Year's run at the end of the month. And album finished, or not the album, but the show finished. And I was like, oh, shit, I don't have another Phish show on the app. But I had the last Beacon Jams. So instead, and look, I have other things in my phone. I've got podcasts. I've got plenty of I've got music and Apple Music, all that stuff. I chose to listen to Beacon Jams, but I also still kind of felt like I was forced to. In a weird sort of way, I was like, I guess there's no other option. Meanwhile, there was plenty of options, but I chose to listen to it. And it was just interesting to go back, and I enjoyed it. But I was reflecting on us talking last week when I asked you in a year, 2 years, would you go back and listen to any of those shows? And you didn't even think about it. It was a no, probably like not. And I've been thinking about that since then, and I had no intention of going back. And I went back and I was listening to it, but it didn't get me going in the same way that a Phish show would. So I guess
exactly.
Yeah, so I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm aligning with you. I think it'll still be a nostalgic thing to maybe check out in a few years. But it's not going to be like I'm not going to listen to all 8 shows in a row because that's what I'm doing. It'll be let's drop in and pay a visit and say see you again.
So in that context, my decision is guess I'm paying more for my phone bill this month. Play.
There you go.
Rochelle's like, how come our phone bill is so high? I'm like, I don't know, man. The kids must be streaming stuff.
That's awesome. So yeah, it sounded good, but yeah, it definitely left me wanting more Phish.
Yeah.
So speaking of Phish, I'll quickly bring it up because I think it's a good topic. Somebody posted on Reddit they asked a question about what they felt was the most unique Phish song, which I think is a loaded question because we can agree that the band is unique. They have a unique sound. They're, if you know the band, you know them as soon as you hear them. And a bit of a debate broke out. He sort of called out like Yem, like right away is probably it.
Yeah.
But if it's not that, what is it? And a lot of people chimed in with Reba. They felt that Reba was one of the most Fishy songs. A few others were dropped in there, but those were the two that were brought up more than anything else. Apart from, I'll read you one of the responses because it brings up Zappa, which we're going to talk a little bit about.
Out of interest to that question, because I'm cold. I haven't looked at the thread. How many of the songs put forth are 3.0 songs?
0.0.
Interesting, right?
Is it though, or is it just unsurprising? Like, really?
No, it's interesting, and it's interesting to the fact that what what classifies Phish in terms of songwriting and composing has not taken place in, what now, 30 years?
Yeah. Yeah, you make a good point.
Right?
I think there's hints of it here and there. There's definitely songs in 1.0 that kind of reflected back to that time. But yeah, most of the new material is not of that nature. That's a good point. So the first response, or maybe this isn't from the poster. It just says, aside from Yem, which is probably the best answer, for me, Reba is the most unmistakably unique Fishy song there is. There's no mistaking who wrote that song, and even though it is proggy, I can't think of a prog band that would ever write anything like it. I think even someone like Zappa would get bored with all the progression changes and just make a new song.
Has that guy listened to Frank Zappa?
Yeah, I didn't quite get that. Somebody responded with that, said, "Hey, you need to check out Zappa and listen to this."
Yeah.
Fluffhead was in there. Meat, Mound, again, Reba, Mango Song.
Mango Song?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that either. Ass-handed, maybe. Healy's Comic, Glide, Susie Greenberg, all distinctly Phish. I don't know. Susie Greenberg is more of a traditional rock song. I think a lot of bands could. And then this one I kind of like. I would say Tweezer. I completely agree with others that Reba and Yem are quintessential Phish, but for the most part composed. Tweezer is by definition unique. Most every version is so different and a beast of its own. It is the jam vehicle's jam vehicle. I would argue that it's one of the most important and defining songs in their vast catalog. I could go on and on. Fucking love Tweezer.
Interesting point.
It is an interesting point. And I think, honestly, the more and more I listen to Tweezer, like I get more and more excited about it because it's so unpredictable. It's almost like...
Did you listen to my recommendation for 98? Did you listen to the second set?
Not yet.
Okay,
not
I won't
yet.
spoil it for you.
Maybe that's tonight on the way home.
Okay, cool.
I like a good second set for the late night drive home. It's dark. It's all spacey. Forgot to tell you, a couple weeks ago, I was driving home and we hit snow for about 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Really thick snow to the point where all of a sudden I couldn't see lights on any houses, any roads. I couldn't see lines on the road. Like I was alone and couldn't see more than 50, 75 feet in front of me. But I was in the middle of a really spacey Yem jam while that was happening. This was like midnight in the middle of nowhere. And I was sober as anything. It was tripping me out, man.
So cool, dude. I love that stuff. I'm glad you're safe, but I love that stuff.
Yeah. Like, it was for those 10, 15 minutes. It was a white knuckle drive. I was gripping onto that wheel. I don't know what the grip was doing for me, but man, it was tense. Anyhow, but yeah, Tweezer is, it just creates a great jumping off point. And you put out in the email yesterday that Tweezer is the best jam vehicle. Discuss. So I do want to talk about that because I'm struggling a little bit with, to back it up a step, the other night I was hanging out here and I was watching, was night three of Baker's Dozen, and they're playing a Wolfman's Brother, and I interpret it to be a Type 2 jam. Clearly it wasn't, or maybe it was. I snapped a quick video of it, sent it to you, asking if you could guess, and you got it right away.
Uh-huh.
And I was pretty surprised by that. And I've been thinking, like, want to maybe discuss a little bit more about how you recognize that,
Mm-hmm.
and do you need to be a musician and play an instrument to be able to understand those better?
No. So the way that you recognize it is that every song, even the ones that like go really out there, the jams still
like Split Open and Melt.
Yep, the jams still have certain themes. Like, so Split Open and Melt, if you pay attention, and again, I haven't listened to every Split Open and Melt. I don't have it, in my head. But Split Open and Melt is defined by the beat that Fishman plays. It's like a really complicated beat. It's like it goes from one measure is like 8/16, and then it goes to 7 or 9/16, and then it goes to 8/16, and then they repeat that over and over again. And part of it throughout the thing is it goes ba-na-na, and then they do their thing ba-na-na. So if you listen, a lot of the times it keeps that theme, right? So no, you don't need to be a musician to recognize that, but you do have to listen to a lot of music and understand things like intervals, right? Like what's the sound between like a second and a third, or a second and a minor third? Like those are the sounds that you have to recognize. And I mean, sometimes it gets way out there and the songs change, so I wouldn't be able to recognize all of them all of the time. But if you develop a good enough ear, you'll be able to recognize stuff like that.
Okay. But when that happens, that's still a Type 1. Is it not? Because it's keeping the same structure. Because I was under the interpretation that a type 1 is basically the song doesn't really change. The soloist will change a bit, but the same basic chord progression, beat, rhythm is played underneath.
Not the same chord progression, though, right? So the chord they can enter another theme based around that chord progression. So it keeps kind of the same structure. You can still kind of tell it's the same, but things are changing.
Okay. But then, so for type 1 versus type 2, because type 2 is under the impression that they just essentially leave the song and just go into the unknown and create something completely.
And it can happen, for sure. It can definitely happen, but it still has, like, I mean, so the part that for Wolfman Brother, they just started coming back to the Wolfman Brother theme a little bit. So that's what tipped me off to, you know, I could recognize it. Like when it goes into like outer space and you're just like, I don't know what's happening here, and it totally gets quiet. Of course, we've left. Right, but typically that's why all the jams sound different. Like, right? Like it's still a, you know, like a Reba jam has a very distinct sound, even when it ventures into La La Land. Mm-hmm. It still sounds like Reba. You know,
gotcha.
You know, and like so, for example, like You Enjoy Myself. You know, is again, it goes off, but typically the chords are, I think it's a G7 or G minor 7 to C7, and it's typically blues based, like it sounds like a blues song. So there's a minor third in there. Trey typically plays the notes of the pentatonic scale with a couple filler notes, right? So I mean, those things kind of stay, you know. So they base things around stuff like that.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then like a song that's like Possum, for example. Possum's a type 1, right? Most of the time. Because the same blues structure stays throughout the whole song. Even though the jam parts are very varied, the chords underneath are the same.
Gotcha. Okay. So why, and I agree with it to a degree without really knowing some of the theory behind it, but why is Tweezer the best jam vehicle? Like you put that out there. Why do you think it is?
I put that out there because of all the songs that I've ever listened to, you know, and I think a lot of people would agree with this, Tweezer is the one that takes the wildest, most Phish-like, you know, like it's out there, man. You don't know what you're going to get. You don't know what they're going to transition to. You know, so it's just the avenue, like the playground, I think has the most tools for them to be able to experiment. So maybe, you know, just based on the conversation, and again, I'd have to think about it and listen to more, because I'm still learning a lot about like music theory and stuff like that. It's probably the way that it's set up. It's open to the widest. It has the most possibilities for them as musicians.
Gotcha. So they can go anywhere they want, really.
Because it's a really simple melody, and like, you know, it's pretty much like it's a scale. So they use the pentatonic scale for that song. That's a scale that's typically in all music around the world. So you could take like Persian music or Greek music, and you could play those 5 notes, right, over that music, and it would all work.
Interesting. Yeah, it seems like trickery, but it's really smart. Like clearly, when they write that, they know that.
Of course. Otherwise, it would just be like, you know, the idea, like you still have to learn how to play your instruments, and there's still like a basic framework to work around. Otherwise, it would just be like me and a bunch of monkeys hammering on stuff. It wouldn't sound musical.
Right. Got it. Okay. Yeah, I think like whenever Tweezer comes on, there is that feeling of, I don't know where this is going to go. I know it's going to go somewhere. Let's just buckle in and enjoy the ride.
And that's that's the part that, sorry to interrupt, but that's like the part I think that's different about Phish is sometimes when I listen to, you know, the Dead jam, it ceases to sound musical. It's really out there. Like the structure is completely broken down.
Right.
But Phish always makes it sound like you're listening to music.
Right. Yeah. They just have a way of getting, they're so groove based. And I know weeks ago I talked about my appreciation for Page and how much that's growing. I think a similar thing has been happening with Mike when we talked about Beacon Jams, and I asked you the question last week, like, who's the player that you miss the most? For me, it was Mike. And I quickly watched 2 of the reaction videos that I saw. This guy named Jamel, aka Jamal, does this thing on YouTube, and he just posts reaction videos. and he did two Phish songs, only two Phish songs that he's ever heard. The first one was Tube from '97, and the second one was Maze from '97 as well. And he was reacting to Mike in a way like it was grooving, right? And they're so groove based, right? Okay. Mike and Phish, once they get going on that groove, it just, I don't know, it just sort of springboards that unique sound, that funk that they tend to bring, and they just get into this groove and rhythm. And before you know it, you're like, holy shit, we're in this total jam. And I bring it up because the guy in the video kept going, oh, baby, jamming. He kept saying that, and he was like moving his shoulders a lot. Yeah, it was just really funny to watch, and that just to see the reaction and all the different things that are going on in their music was really neat to see. So yeah, is there another song like Tweezer that you can think of that's a consistent jam vehicle? Because there's so many compositions, there's so many what ifs. You don't get a Hampton Haley's. Those are once in a blue moon. What are some other songs that you can think of that are consistent good jam vehicles?
So I was thinking about the question, right? What's the most Phishiest song? I think what we need to do first to answer that question is we would need to define what makes it a Phish song. I think because I was thinking a lot about that answer. To pick Tweezer like meets the jam criteria to the most. But there's also compositional pieces that are not included in Tweezer, right? Like Tweezer doesn't do Trey justice as a composer and part of Phish. Right. So I think you'd have to include something like that. That's why I'm making the. So I'm trying to think of what are other good jam songs that they play. I don't know. Down with Disease is a good one. Mike's song, Simple.
Yep. Versus say a song like Harry Hood. There's a bit of a jam to it, but it always sort of goes in the same type of direction and comes back, right? Like,
now you're starting to get it, right? Like you're starting to understand that, like, Harry Hood, the jam part always, it sounds different all the time, but it also kind of sounds like Harry Hood during the jam part.
Yeah. I think I'll have to sit on that one.
Divided Sky, like I think you can make an argument to say that Divided Sky is the most Fishy song.
Yeah, well, potentially. I think when you Google, the Phish songs rank in a lot of lists, that's the number one song.
It's a song that I've heard a lot of people recommend to be like, oh, you need to play them this song, kind of like the litmus test to see if they're going to like this band.
Yeah, I guess it encompasses a lot of things. Great composition, great guitar playing, great, a musicianship amongst the band, some interesting lyrics, the length of the song, that pause in the middle, like it's unique in a lot of ways. You can't see any other band really pulling off the same way that they do. And maybe on paper, a song like that doesn't necessarily work, but when the energy with the crowd is there and the way he played and the way they play it, not just Trey, but the way they play that song, yeah, it's pretty awesome. And the timing that they typically choose when they play it also goes into it.
Oh, dude. But again, like, I think I think all these things again kind of just lead me to like the same kind of conclusion excitement I get every week at how much thought and how intelligent and like smart the boys really are, and how much thought has gone into something like this.
Yeah, you wonder if and they don't seem like the kind of band that will do it, but Stones have done it, Beatles have done it, Zeppelin has done it, where they've released like early demo versions, and I guess you kind of have like live versions of the songs before they became the full songs, like Black Eyed Katie and those types of things. But you wonder if we'll ever hear like early versions and early demos of songs that have completely changed and taken on a different life of their own from the early days, if that'll ever come to the light of day. They don't seem to be the kind of band that'll put that out, but in a sense it'd be kind of interesting to hear the early versions of songs before they were finished and what they turned into.
Do they record their rehearsals?
I don't know.
Neither do I.
Maybe.
I don't know.
I really don't know. That seems like a lot of recording and archiving to have, but maybe they do for inspiration. They go back and listen to it. And
I'm asking, and maybe this will be the good segue. When I watched the Zappa documentary, they made it seem like Frank Zappa has every note he ever played in his vault in the basement. It is like,
wow. Yeah, let's talk about that. Yeah, Zappa's clearly a really interesting figure. I don't know his stuff or really know about him nearly the level that you do. I remember really well.
Yeah, just so we're clear, I'm like a low level. Like I'll share my thoughts on that, but and
Zappa is one of those artists that, you know, has, I guess, bred a lot of fans similar to Phish fans in the sense that the very devout following the live music, bootlegs, trading, a unique live experience that is a one-of-a-kind show. The way that he approached a live show there's some similarities there, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. I'm going to make sure that I watch that tonight. Tuesday night is my late stay up till 2-3 o'clock in the morning night. Mm-hmm. I'll be watching that tonight. Where can I get it, by the way? Where is this documentary?
I just streamed it.
From what though? Is it on?
Check you do torrents, right? So check the torrents.
Okay. No, I don't do anything illegal at all. No, what in the world are you talking about, Dr. K? Okay. So, and what's the name of the documentary?
Zappa.
Oh, Zappa. Okay, that'll be easy to find. So, yeah, you kind of opened up my eyes a little bit back in 2006. If I'm not mistaken, it was the first tour that Tweezer was doing as Zappa played Zappa. And, you know, like back in the day, I would go to you with shows because I'd love to see concerts, even though I didn't really know the Zappa music all that well. And to be honest, going into that show, the only thing I really knew about Zappa musically was some production work he had done with a crazy street artist from the 60s that a guy used to work with named Peter when I used to do the Lawn Monkey gig.
Yep.
He put in this tape of this guy called Wild Man Fisher.
Right.
And I was like, what the F are we listening to? He's like, oh, Frank Zappa discovered this guy and produced this album, and you can hear Frank Zappa talking to him in the background in these recordings. And I was like, huh? And then he told me about the names of Zappa's kids, Dweezil and Moon Unit. And I was like, okay. I was 20 at the time. Didn't really get it. You had gotten into him a bit, and then we went to see Zappa play Zappa. And again, I didn't really know what I was getting into. I think you had told me something along the lines of, you know, his music is very compositional. You're going to hear a lot of notes. They're going to go up and down scales, and it's going to be weird, but it's going to be fucking awesome. And I was like, done, easy. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's fucking awesome. I don't know a name of the song that played that night, but I remember we were pretty high up in the balcony in this nice small theater in Buffalo. And I remember seeing the spectacle. How many people were on stage? It was a big, big band. The drummer, the percussion, the rhythms, it was just like you could really, even if you didn't know that music, you couldn't help but have an appreciation for the writing that went into that. So, and then add on top of that Zappa's personality and what I know of him. I'm really excited to watch it. So let's talk Zappa. What do you want to say? What did we learn?
I was just, you know, again, you watch these things with where you're at in life. I was struck this time just by how much, you know, Phish borrowed from Zappa. Mm-hmm. It seems like every band that's known for their live music has had a venue where they would play, you know, 6-7 nights a week for hours at a time to really sharpen their chops. Yeah. So Zappa had that in New York City of all places. You know, so I don't know, me as a Zappa fan, Zappa kind of falls into I love the Dead. But Zappa has some songs and some compositions that are so good that it makes up for the stuff that, in my opinion, is not great.
Right.
You know, there's a lot of stuff. I don't know. I'm giving it a second and a third listen, but there's lots of stuff in the 80s where he was really upset. You know, he was a pretty angry guy, man. He had a lot to be angry about. But,
very prickly.
But a lot of there's a lot of smutty lyrics and stuff that I don't know. I don't love. I don't love the way that some of the albums sound. I don't love some of the sounds, you know. But again, some of the compositions and some of the way that it comes together is just so good that I'm willing to put up with it. Either way, super important musician, super awesome documentary. You know, it's just incredible. Some of the stuff that he did, the way that he approached music, it was, you know.
Yeah, you know, the little bit that I've seen of him, I watched that interview that we were talking about a 20-minute interview from 1984.
Yes, you said that along. That was awesome.
And almost be a tough interview. You could see the woman. You couldn't see her, but you got a sense of he, in terms of conversation, most people will do their best to sort of push the conversation forward and have it move and have it flow.
Yeah.
He was almost confrontational in how he answered questions, and just very calm and would abruptly stop speaking, not elaborate too much, didn't really mix too many words, and you could see well thought out, very articulate, but some strong opinions on things. And it reminds me of the hatred that Phish had and has for MTV. Similar in that interview, he was being interviewed by MTV, and he's tearing them apart. Like, that's awesome. And the woman is saying how refreshing it is. You know, she's working for that company that he's trashing, and she's giving him accolades for doing that. And, you know, it was talking about how much MTV changed the music business back in the 80s. And it really, really did. It very much sculpted what was popular, why it got on, why you got a record contract. Really interesting to listen to. I imagine a lot of that stuff is in the documentary.
You know what? Not that much.
It's more about his career and music.
It was more about his career, and they talk about the part where he was the one that went to bat for, you know, freedom of expression and freedom of speech.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
But not so much, you know, I mean, there's a couple of clips where they played, but not so much that stuff. It was more about him.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll definitely be checking it out.
But it's
a lot of live music,
you know,
in it.
Just talking about that. So, you know, MTV in the 80s, because we're kind of living through all of it now, you know?
Yeah.
So MTV in the 80s was probably, I don't know, and again, I'm limited. So if anyone's listening and I'm completely wrong, just, you know, send me a message and let me know how I'm wrong. I'd love to correct my view. But it seemed like it was a time of like the highest record label control. Like there's no possible way you could make it as an independent into music. And now in 2020, it's exactly the opposite. The structure's crumbled, right? The amount of big bands, I would argue, is at an all-time low, right? There's like 2 or 3 artists, right? Like Bieber and like maybe 2 or 3 other people that are like the pinnacle of like the biggest scenes in music, and yet artists are still unhappy.
Right.
You know, now they're complaining about, you know, like, dude, you have to work, you know, like you gotta hustle here. You have something, you have a product, but there's a level playing field. So everybody else that has the same product has to compete against you. So you gotta work and you gotta grind, right? The other thing that was like, that came through in the documentary, same with Phish, they grind.
Yes.
Right? Like the work ethic is there.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't get that great and that good by accident. Right. And it's something that people don't see. You know, we see people and things, we look at the end product, we completely forget about the journey, you know, and anybody that's great at something, whatever that skill is, they tend to make it look easy, but they make it look easy because of the hours and hours of dedication and commitment. And
one of my, like, you know, funny story on that, like one of my chiropractic mentors, you know, we're young, we're struggling in practice. And we're like, hey, you know, what do we do? Like, me and my buddy are talking to him. And he's like, okay, well, here's what you're going to do. He's like, every month you're going to get everyone in your practice. You're going to tell them to bring somebody to your practice and you're going to do a talk. I'm like, okay. My buddy goes, well, I can't do that. What else can I do? And Reggie Gold looks him in the eye and he goes, you can fail.
Wow, yeah. Those are your options. You can do this.
Right? I want a following like the Grateful Dead. Perfect. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to get together with the group. You're going to rent a place. You're going to play 7 nights a week. You're going to tell everybody to come. You're going to play for 3 hours a night. And then when you're home in the morning, you're going to rehearse and then you're going to go to your gigs. Well, I don't want to do that. What else can I do? Well, you're not going to be the Grateful Dead. Like, no, not those things specifically. But like, you know, man, like you got to work here.
Yeah, it reminds me of, have you seen Rocket Man, the Elton John movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that scene where he's not like, he's just playing in a band, and he says to the guy in the band, you know, I want to be a songwriter. I want to do what you do. And he goes, then start writing songs.
Right.
Right. Like you want to be a leader? Start leading. You want to be a writer?
Right.
Guess what? Fucking start writing.
Exactly.
And, yeah. Like, when's the best time to plant a tree? 200 years ago. When's the second best time to plant a tree? Today, right now.
I want to be a musician. Great. So pick up an instrument and get going. Well, I'm bad at it. Well, yeah. How do you think you're going to get good at it? You're going to be bad at it for a really, 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 really long time.
Of course. Yeah. And that's, you know what, I think that was always the hurdle with me getting over playing the guitar. I wanted to be good right away. Yeah. I didn't work through the pain and go through all the basics that you need to learn to get to the point. You know, I didn't really begin with the end in mind in the way that I probably should have.
Well, and again, with that type of stuff, it has to be fun. Right? Like you have to enjoy that period where you're like, I don't know the timing of this song. You know, how do I get that? How do I learn that? But to go back like to the Zappa documentary, like, I don't know, man, he seemed kind of grumpy like at the end, you know, like you watch the Trey documentary, especially now Trey's older, he just seems really happy, you know, and that's not to like circumvent the challenges of being a musician because they'll always be there.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
but I don't know. It's just interesting how the different personalities respond to things differently. Was another takeaway that I had.
Yeah, and you wonder too. Again, I don't really know, but I know sometimes I think like I wonder if the vision of how it's going to go and how your life is going to go, if maybe it wasn't going the way that Frank wanted it to go, and that then bred out those types of lyrics and that type of music, versus I don't know if it could be really going any better for Phish or Trey or whatever. Now they made that, they have a different attitude. There's a lot that goes into that, but you wonder if the predicted path that they thought they would go down ended up being different.
I think something had to do with, and again, I'm psychologizing here. It's just for like, don't really take me seriously. I'm just more interested. It seemed like Zappa was really critical of music in general.
Yes.
Right? Like really critical. Like it had to sound this certain way. You know, he was always pissed off at his musicians because the vision in his mind didn't get expressed properly.
Yep.
Whereas Trey, you know, we're singing Yem and the girls sing woman instead of man. And he's like, that was awesome.
Right. Way more open to.
You took my idea and you added your personality to it.
Right. Gotcha. Versus, I think fluidity and being more rigid.
Yeah.
There's definitely some contrast there. I remember you telling me a story about, and you'll tell it better, about somebody, a guitarist that was auditioning for his band. Steve Vai. How did that go?
Yeah, so I don't know where I heard this. I don't even know if this is completely accurate, but I guess Steve Vai was trying out, and like Zappa had like all these like complicated things, like play this, you know, and then change this, add this note, add a 16th, play it 5/4, play it in 7/8, whatever. And Steve Vai was like, "That's impossible, man." So Frank's like, "Go try out for Pat Benatar if that's impossible."
One of the best guitar players in the world.
You know,
that's awesome. So I'm definitely interested.
Yeah, it's cool. And like part of me gets it, man. Like you have a vision, and if you want things done a certain way, you know, good, you know, have at her. But
yeah, and it's funny, right? Because I think visionaries, they I think a commonality that a lot of them share is they are prickly. They're very rigid in what they want, and they won't compromise because they believe that what they see or what they want or what they believe is possible is the right thing. Right? Steve Jobs was very much like that. Like didn't care what other people thought. Said no, this is what we're going to do. I don't care if you think it's impossible. You're going to find a way.
Yeah. I think you just have to. I think you just have to, because I'm sure Trey is like that for certain things. You know, I'm sure there's a line. I think the argument here or the conversation is where you draw the line.
Right.
You know, like with Phish, again, we've talked about this 1.5 million times. With Phish, it wasn't playing the notes right. It was the energy of the song. So if you're going to change something and it's going to bring more energy or bring a certain vibe or make everyone be like, yeah, that's awesome, we're keeping it. Right? With Zappa, it was like the horn player played an F instead of an F sharp, and he was like, you know, like you hear the guys and the musicians are like, he only ever told me like once in my life that I did a good job.
Right. Yeah, and just as you were saying that, I got the image of watching Phish, and when, or even Beacon Jams for that matter, because I've watched a lot of that lately. When another player does something and Trey picks up his head and looks, and he gets that smile, he's like, "Yeah!" Like the reaction, and bringing it back to improv, that yes and mentality. You know, being comfortable enough in what you want to do, but being willing to have somebody be brought into it to make it different, to change it up.
But that's what makes Zappa so interesting to me, because the interview that you sent, you know, he pretty much talks, and it was posted on Reddit in the Phish group. He does an excellent job of talking about the value of improvisation in music. To be like, this is a one-time shot. I get to paint I think the terms that he uses beautiful too, beautiful language. He says I get to decorate time.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I get to decorate time with my knowledge based on like the rhythm, based on the moment.
Yeah, that would otherwise, like sitting here, would seem impossible, is what he said. But then it comes to reality, and they'll never be able to create it again because there's so many other factors.
Right. But then on the flip side, to be so stringent and like, you know, almost masochistic on playing the note in the way that he, you know, envisioned it in his head. Yeah,
really fascinating.
I agree.
I'm really excited to watch it tonight. How long is it? Am I in for like a 2-hour ride or
About
what is
2
it?
hours.
There you go. Okay. Yeah, I will definitely be checking that out as long as I can find it and get it, which I'm sure I'll be able to. You can find it, I can find it.
That is a lot of truth because I don't do anything wrong or incorrect.
Awesome, man. So I'll have to listen to that show from '98 on the way home tonight. It was July 15th or something?
15th.
Okay.
July 15th.
Second set specifically?
Second set starts with, I want to say Birds of a Feather.
Okay. Very good.
And those early, by the way, just a couple of things that are just so cool, man. I love the part from Dinner and a Movie, the start of the Halley's Comet Jam, when Trey just looks over at Mike and he goes, "Hey, Mike, stay in F." Much like I love the excitement of the early versions of Birds of a Feather when you can hear Trey yell in excitement. He's so pumped to play this piece of music.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's the best. I mean, and it's infectious, right? It's very genuine. There's nothing fake about that. There's a guy that's doing something that he loves, and everybody should have the opportunity to do that, right?
I agree.
In best case scenario. All right, my friend. I will check that out tonight. I will watch Zappa. We'll have updates for you next week. Fingers crossed for the Phish Christmas album. I really want to hear Little Drummer Boy. Can you imagine what the actual album cover would look like? What a vision. I can't even imagine.
It would probably be John Fishman in some scantily clad outfits.
Yeah, in fact, one of the reaction vids I was watching was they didn't show Phish or John Fishman in a lot of the clips in the two reaction videos that guy was watching, but we finally kind of went to him from the back and you could see his whole body. And the reaction guy goes, "That guy wearing a summer dress?" He was so he had a face on him like, "What? What's he? Oh, all right." And then got back into it and just, so good. Only Phish can pull that one off.
All right, brother.
All right, man. Have a great week. Thanks for chatting.
Yeah,
Thanks for listening, everybody. Smash the like button as always. Subscribe. Tell your grandparents. Okay. Have a good week.
Bye.